"Help me hang the laundry, Jenna," came Grandma's voice from outside. Jenna never refused her grandmother's requests for help around the house. "Well, the laundry is almost done. Let's go cook dinner," suggested the grandma 10 minutes later. Though they lived only the two of them, with no one else to feed, they still prepared Sunday dinner on weekends on a regular basis. They always covered the round table with a white tablecloth, put Grandma's favourite set on it, decorated it with unpretentious bouquet of flowers, and put the most delicious food on the table. It had always been a tradition in their little family. "Well, even though there are no men in the house, we will pamper ourselves," Mrs. Fox liked to say. "You know, Jenna, even a family as tiny as ours must have traditions. It is easier and happier to live with tradition because there is always something unchanging and immutable. Traditions are a great thing, Jenna. When you have your family, your husband and children, you should set the table for a family dinner on Sunday. Then everyone will know in advance that it's a day off and they need to stay at home, discuss things, advise the younger ones, and get advice from the older ones." Jenna had always dreamed of having a large family since childhood. Not that it was bad for them to be alone with her grandmother, but the girl yearned for a father or an older brother. She wanted to know and understand what it was like to receive a man's protection and support. Her friend Heather, on the other hand, could threaten offenders by calling her older brother, who was a boxer, or her father, who was a policeman. Unfortunately, Jenna didn't even have a grandfather. Her grandmother and an old dog named Finn, who once served with the neighbour's nephew on the border, were her most important protectors. When the dog grew old, they wanted to put him to sleep, but Grandma took Finn to her place. He lived 7 more years, though he became almost deaf and blind. The old dog always accompanied Mrs. Fox to the train when she left their small village on business for the city. When Jenna grew older and went to college in the city, he made sure to see her off every day. "Finn, you don't have to follow me," Jenna often said angrily. She was very sorry for the old dog. "Look, you're barely walking. Go back to your seat." For a while, the dog still tried to waddle after his beloved younger mistress. But soon his strength finally left him, and he could only look sadly after her. "Someday, like you, I won't be able to see our Jenna off or greet her properly," Mrs. Fox saddened, looking at the old dog. "Why such gloomy thoughts, Grandma? You're only 67 years old. I still have you. You'll have great-grandchildren. It's certain." "Oh, I'd like to believe it, Jenna," sighed Grandma, "but I don't know if I'll be healthy enough." Finn died while Jenna was in the city. When she came back, she saw the old dog frozen in waiting, who had never managed to meet his mistress for the last time. The girl cried for a long time. After a week, she wanted to bring home a new puppy so that she and her grandmother would not be so sad. "No need, granddaughter," Mrs. Fox asked her. "You have to go to the city anyway, and it will be difficult for me to look after the dog alone. I'm getting old. I don't have much strength left." Jenna was very upset, listening to the complaints of her dearest person. She didn't want to move to the city, and she continued to travel there every day by train, even after finding a job there. But thanks to these trips, she met her destiny. One autumn evening, returning home at dusk, she saw a group of drunken local hooligans beating up a stranger. The incident was not far from the railroad station. Apparently he could not leave this inhospitable neighbourhood in peace. While Jenna was running to the location where the fight had taken place, the attackers had already fled. It wasn't surprising that they quickly left, because the girl screamed at the top of her voice and called the police. The poor guy was lying in a pool of his own blood, with a broken nose and a couple of broken ribs. It was not easy for him to stand up either. Jenna called an ambulance, and, not wanting to leave the stranger alone in a strange city, went with him to the hospital. David, as the guy's name was, turned out to be an interesting man. He and Jenna became friends, and the girl began to visit him in the hospital, where she also met his parents. "Jenna, you're like a guardian angel for our son. If you hadn't arrived in time, who knows how things would have ended," said David's mother one day. The guys who attacked David were found. As it turned out, the drunken group spotted a stranger, and alcohol, as was often the case in such situations, gave them a sense of permissiveness. One thing led to another, and David was drawn into the fight against his will. And when the passion settled down, his attackers didn't even remember why they had attacked a stranger. "You'll be like a daughter to us now, Jenna. Come to visit. My husband and I will always be happy to see you," David's mother persuaded Jenna. The man was discharged from the hospital, and his parents came to take him home. David and Jenna smiled conspiratorially at each other. They had not yet told David's parents that they had decided to get married. "Mum, you won't believe this, but you're really going to see a lot of Jenna now," David informed them with a wink. "You have no idea how often. I invited Jenna to come and live with us. We've been a couple for 2 weeks now, and yesterday I proposed, and Jenna agreed. So get ready, Mum, for the wedding." David's parents were surprised by such a hasty decision by the young couple, but on the other hand, they were happy for their son. They liked Jenna very much, and they were glad that the girl who had so touchingly taken care of their David all this time would become his wife. "Don't worry about me, Jenna," her grandmother comforted her. "I'll be all right. If anything, the neighbour will help. Go to the city. You can't stay near me forever. Therefore go and be happy. And if you're happy, I'll be happy too." Mrs. Fox hugged her granddaughter, and the girl realized that her grandmother was letting her go with a light heart. The wedding took place at the end of January, and in early March, Jenna and David learned that they would soon become parents. The spring brought great happiness into their lives. David's parents and Mrs. Fox constantly called each other, and the grandma knew all the news in the young couple's life. "And I already know that you went for an ultrasound yesterday," the elderly woman joyfully reported to her granddaughter. "David's mum has already told me everything. How are you feeling? Can you come to me on Easter? I've cleaned the house, and I'll get some more aromatic herbs. We'll have Sunday dinner like we used to." Throughout the summer, Jenna enjoyed her pregnancy. She often visited her grandmother in the village, mostly with her husband on weekends. Mrs. Fox enjoyed these visits as a small child enjoys a new toy, and Jenna and David never denied her the pleasure of being with them. In the village, Jenna often met her best friend Heather, who also came to her parents on weekends as she worked in the city. "How I envy you, Jenna. David is so kind and caring, unlike my last suitor. I always end up dating some kind of moral freak or couch potato. Oh, by the way, do you remember Helen? She has a terrible story. Her husband turned out to be an abuser." "Who?" Jenna thought she hadn't heard correctly. "Well, he was an abuser. It turns out that she was often humiliated and beaten by him, and she didn't tell anyone. Maybe Helen was embarrassed or afraid, who knows. Recently, he even locked her in the house for 3 days because he was jealous and wouldn't let her out. Thankfully, the neighbours called the police, and she was eventually released. Now, they have a case against the jealous husband. Helen confessed that he had been torturing her like that for years." "What a horror," marvelled Jenna. She realised how lucky she was to have David. They were like two halves of the same whole, separated at birth by fate, but able to meet thanks to chance. Jenna couldn't even imagine that David could look at her badly, let alone raise his hand against her. Listening to Heather's stories was like listening to horror stories. A happy childhood with her beloved grandmother and a successful marriage with a loving husband had shielded Jenna from many horrors that might have come her way. David, I've been thinking, and I've realized how lucky we are. Few people are so fortunate. Some people live with someone they don't love, suffer from, or can't have children with. But we, thank God, are doing well. Aren't we? David nodded silently and kissed her tenderly. He really loved his wife and couldn't imagine how his life would have turned out if he hadn't met her that cold autumn evening. And now it was autumn again. Jenna was 7 months pregnant. She and her husband now knew they were expecting a boy and had even chosen the name Thomas in honor of David's grandfather. My grandfather was a decent man with a big heart, David said. He was smart. He grew up without a father. His great-grandfather was killed in the war. From his early youth, he got used to carrying the whole family on his back. All our successes, especially our current ones, are thanks to him. Jenna listened and smiled. She was ready to call her son any name her husband chose, because she trusted him completely in everything. She trusted her life and the life of their future child. Jenna enjoyed strolling through the autumn park, rustling the golden leaves and inhaling the warm smell of fallen leaves in peace. Sometimes she would sit on a bench and quietly talk to her baby, saying, "Tommy, we are all waiting for you very much. You will be a happy baby, coming into this world with the most loving, friendly family. I can't wait to see your eyes, your tiny hands and feet, and kiss your tiny nose. My sunshine." That afternoon, Jenna was returning from a walk when a passerby car suddenly flew out at her from almost nowhere. She was leisurely walking across the road on the crosswalk, and the last thing she remembered was the horrible sound of brakes and a thud from the side. She didn't even have time to fully realize that the out-of-control driver had hit her and thrown her aside. Days later, Jenna woke up in the hospital. "She came to her senses," was the first phrase she heard. Her grandmother was next to her, and her face was swollen from days of sleep deprivation and tears. Jenna couldn't understand what had happened to her. "Grandma, why am I in the hospital? I don't remember anything," Jenna asked. "Granddaughter, we'll talk later, not now," her grandmother replied. Jenna was confused and wanted to know the truth about her condition. "Grandma, tell me honestly, what's wrong with me?" "Jenna, you were hit by a car. You have many bruises and a concussion. Let's talk more about it later. You need to rest now," her grandmother said, trying to comfort her. "And the baby?" cried the woman, fearfully, only now realizing that the accident might have harmed the child. Mrs. Fox did not answer. She turned away from her granddaughter so that she would not see the tears running down her cheeks. "No, it's not true!" Jenna screamed. "He's here! He's with me! I can feel him! Just like before!" "Jenna, honey, calm down, please. You're still young. The doctor said you can still have children." "I don't want other children. I want my Tommy!" Jenna was terrifying to look at. The swelling had not yet gone down on her face, and bruises and cuts were visible everywhere. But that was not what was frightening. The woman's gaze was completely insane. At the sound of her scream, a nurse rushed in and injected Jenna with a sedative. The woman fell into a deep sleep again. While she slept, all her loved ones gathered at her bedside, trying to find out from the doctor what they should do with Jenna now. "You need to understand that she has more than just a head injury. It's quite possible that the stress she's been under is going to cause mental problems in the near future. You should definitely show her to a good psychiatrist." Things were terrible for Jenna at home. She refused to accept the truth. The woman was still talking to the baby that was no longer in her belly. She didn't want to believe that her little angel had flown off to heaven and kept singing songs to him dreaming of what he would grow up to be. My little son, my little sunshine, how I long to see your eyes, your tiny hands, your tiny feet, and to kiss your tiny nose. My joy! It was impossible to watch all this without crying. The whole family felt like they were starting to go crazy along with Jenna. We need to solve the question of hospitalization at the mental clinic urgently, insisted David's father. Dad, well, how can I leave her now? She needs me. I want to be with Jenna. Well, then the two of you will go crazy. Who's going to feel better? A couple of days later, it got worse. Jenna stopped responding to people at home. She would either stare at one point or start pacing the house thoughtfully, as if looking for someone. All right, I'll go and talk to the doctor, and then I'll take her too. David finally gave up. But when he returned home, Jenna was not in the house. I only ran to the grocery store for a minute, David's mother excused herself. How did I know she would want to go out? The whole family rushed to look for the missing woman, but Jenna was nowhere to be found. David and his father immediately went to the village where her grandmother lived, but even there Jenna was not found. She did not show up at home the next day either. Soon the police were looking for her, but couldn't find her anywhere. It was as if Jenna had vanished into thin air. David could not find a place for his grief. He looked for his beloved wherever she had been before. He went to acquaintances and distant relatives of the family and wandered through parks and forests as if a ghost. He questioned random passers-by and pasted wanted posters on poles and the walls of houses. All acquaintances and strangers helped him. Heather, Jenna's friend, was especially worried and tried to help. David, do not worry, we will definitely find her, and the police will not abandon us. My father promised that they would not stop looking for her. Time passed, but there was no progress in Jenna's case. So, 5 years had passed. Sadly, Jenna had to be officially recognized as dead. During these years, Heather was at David's side. Their common grief had united them. Eventually, they decided to link their fates. David's mother blamed herself for the disappearance of her first daughter-in-law, but was glad that David had come to terms with what happened and had finally begun to build a new relationship with Jenna's friend. She liked Heather, but feared there was no real love between her son and this woman. However, life showed that the young couple had indeed fallen in love with each other and had already begun to dream of having a child. After getting married, the couple decided to go on a honeymoon, not abroad, but to the cultural capital of the country, which Heather had long dreamed of visiting. She wanted to see all the museums, famous monuments of architecture. David had once studied in this city and still had some friends from his youth there. Heather, did you know that there is a kissing bridge in this city? We must go there first, whispered David, hugging his wife. There is an old belief. If newlyweds start kissing on one side of the river, continue on the bridge, and kiss until they reach the other side of the river, they will live happily ever after, together. They did just that. It was the happiest day of Heather's life, even happier than their wedding, which they decided not to make big and lavish, but with only their closest friends and relatives in attendance. When they kissed on the bridge, all the people around them smiled, admiring this beautiful and joyful couple. When they reached the other side of the river, Heather told her husband that she had saved one surprise until then. She was pregnant. David picked his wife up in his arms and spun her around. He was crazy with happiness. David, be careful, put me down immediately, Heather asked, laughing. What are our plans for the near future? Now, we will go for a walk, admire the sights, and then go to the hotel. But tomorrow, my old friend is waiting for us for Sunday lunch. Michael and I studied together. We lived in the same room in the student dormitory. We haven't seen each other for many years. Can you imagine? He has a son who just turned 3 years old the other day. When he found out we'd be here, he asked me not to plan anything on Sunday. They have a tradition, Sunday dinners, just like we do when I and Jenna... David stopped himself abruptly. "Oh, it's okay, David," said Heather, trying not to show her pain. "Jenna took this tradition from her grandmother, but other people also have this tradition. Anyway, I'd love to visit your friend." David felt very guilty, and therefore he was especially tender and attentive towards his wife that evening. The next day they bought gifts for a friend's family: flowers, cognac, and a children's motorcycle on batteries. And soon a joyful David and Heather were standing on the threshold of Michael's apartment, exactly at the appointed time. The friends embraced. Michael invited his friends to come into the living room. "Jenna, we have guests. Meet my friend David and his wife Heather." What happened next cannot be described in words. Michael was bewildered as Heather, essentially a stranger, rushed towards his wife, sobbing to embrace her. Meanwhile, David, white as chalk, began to say something absurd in Michael's opinion. "Jenna, but you died 5 years ago. It's impossible. Where have you been all this time? Oh my goodness!" It all seemed like the ravings of a madman, but as Michael looked at his wife, he began to guess something. When he first met Jenna 5 years prior, she had no documents, no money, and most importantly, she was in a semi-delirious state and remembered absolutely nothing, either about who she was or what had happened to her. But now, as Jenna was shifting her gaze from Heather to David, it was as if a veil fell from her eyes. "Tommy, my little son!" This was the first thing Jenna said after several heavy minutes of silence, and she began to cry. "Jenna," Michael, embracing his wife and addressing her like a little child, reassured her. "Our son's name is Chris." Jenna fainted, and David's pregnant wife wasn't in the best condition either. It was hard to believe, but Jenna had been found. And found when no one was looking for her. Only Jenna's grandmother had prayed until now and believed that her granddaughter was alive. That's why, when all 4 of them slowly began to come to their senses, the first thing they did was call Jenna's grandmother. Throughout the years, David and Heather had not forgotten about the elderly lady. They often called her and supported her as best they could, both morally and financially. After Jenna's disappearance, Mrs. Fox had been very ill, and only the hope of meeting her granddaughter and the medicine and vitamins that David brought her had somehow kept her alive. "Mrs. Fox, good afternoon." David decided to call his grandmother-in-law first. The young people were afraid that, hearing Jenna's voice on the receiver, the elderly woman might feel ill at such a surprise. "How are you feeling?" David asked. "Oh, David, thank you. I'm doing well. How are you? How's Heather?" "We're doing well too, and we have some good news for you. About Jenna. We found her. She's alive and she's doing great. She had lost her memory back then, but she remembers everything now. I'll put her on the phone." During Jenna's conversation with her grandma, there were many tears and few words. But the main thing the elderly lady could understand was that she had a great-grandson, and that very soon they would come to visit her. "Grandma, there's someone else I need to introduce to you. His name is Michael. He's my husband and Chris's father. I love him very much. He's very nice, and you're sure to love him too." As Jenna spoke, Michael and Heather breathed a sigh of relief. Years had passed, and nothing could be changed. They had their own families now. The main thing was that now it was clear what had happened to Jenna, and that all 4 of them would remain friends. However, there was still David, so they both looked at him almost simultaneously and realized that there would be no problems on his part either. David accepted this difficult situation and was not going to ruin Jenna's family, especially since he had his beloved Heather and was waiting for her to give him an heir. A week later, they were all standing together on Mrs. Fox's doorstep. Sunday family dinners were sacred, and now they had a bigger family than before. And at the head of the table, of course, was little Chris, a family sweetheart and such a long-awaited great-grandson for the elderly grandma.